Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Clara Reynolds padded along the wet city sidewalk, her heart tight and her throat tight. The light rain seemed to mirror her feelings, cold, gray, and melancholy. A few hours earlier, she had discovered the truth about Andrew, her fiancé of 3 years. He had been cheating on her for months, and not with just anyone, but with a coworker she barely knew. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her umbrella, trying to hold back the tears. How could she have been so wrong? How could someone she loved so much have betrayed her trust so casually? The flashbacks of their last argument still echoed in her head. Andrew had told her, coldly, "It's just a fling, Clara. You take everything too seriously." This sentence, however banal, had been like a guillotine. Clara felt humiliated, hurt, and lost. And it was in this mixture of anger and despair that a crazy idea germinated in her mind. What if she decided, on a whim, to marry just anyone? Not for love, but to regain control of her life. To show, especially to herself, that she could choose her own destiny. The sun was beginning to set when Clara entered the apartment she still shared with Andrew. The air was eerily quiet, as if even the walls were holding their breath. She found her phone lying on the counter, a message open on the screen. Her eyes widened as she recognized the name Emily, the colleague. The words scrolled before her, each sentence a sharp edge. Andrew had a date with her that evening, exactly at the time he'd promised to be home. Anger and pain mingled in an uncontrollable torrent. Clara felt her legs buckle and collapsed onto the sofa. Her hands trembled as she covered her face. 3 years of trust, 3 years of love, swept away in an instant by a betrayal she had never suspected. Then, as if by reflex, she called her best friend, Jessica. Jessica's voice, soft but firm, gradually brought her back to reality. "Clara. Breathe. You don't need him to be whole. You're stronger than you think." Clara nodded, even though Jessica couldn't see her. She knew her friend was right, but the pain was still raw. She looked around. Every object in the apartment seemed to bear the mark of their shared past, the photos on the walls, the plates in the kitchen, even the old couch she'd collapsed on. Everything reminded her of Andrew and what he'd done to her. That night, as the city fell asleep under a veil of rain, Clara made a promise to herself: she would never let anyone hurt her like that again. And if she had to make a crazy decision, then so be it. The next morning, Clara woke up feeling a mixture of fatigue and restlessness. The events of the previous day still weighed heavily on her, but a strange sense of freedom filled her. For the first time in months, she felt that anything was possible. What if she could rewrite the rules of her life? She decided to go out for a short walk, with no particular destination. The previous day's rain had left sparkling puddles on the sidewalks, and the air smelled of wet earth and hot coffee. Clara walked purposefully, her hands in her coat pockets. Her mind wandered between betrayal, anger, and that crazy idea she'd formed in her heart, to marry a stranger, just to feel like she was regaining control of her life. That's when she saw him. A man stood by a fountain, his hair slightly damp from the remaining drops, an almost shy smile on his lips as he watched the children playing around the water. There was something singularly reassuring in his gaze, a warmth that contrasted with the cold of the morning. He met her eyes, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "Hello," he said, his voice soft and deep. "Are you okay in this rain?" Clara was surprised. She didn't know why, but she immediately felt at ease. Without thinking, a surge of spontaneity prompted her to reply with an almost cheeky smile. "Not really. But I think it could be arranged, if I married someone nice." The man raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Would you do it just like that?" he asked, laughing softly. "Why not?" Clara replied, almost as if challenging herself. "After all, what have I got to lose?" Their eyes met again, and something strange happened. This suspended moment, between madness and destiny, enveloped them in a gentle but intense tension. A few minutes later, Clara found herself asking him, "Well, do you want to marry me? The man burst out laughing, a genuine, hearty laugh, and shook his head. Are you serious? Clara nodded, her heart pounding. And he smiled again, a smile that seemed to say he accepted this crazy bet, this improbable adventure. A few weeks later, they were married. No grand ceremony, no pomp, just two strangers united by a shared impulse, by a need to feel alive and free. Clara felt light, almost euphoric, unaware that this marriage would turn her life upside down in ways she could never have imagined. What she didn't know was that this man, James Whitmore, was no mere passerby. Behind that smile and unassuming demeanor was a billionaire, heir to a global financial empire, whose life would soon become intimately intertwined with hers. And so, without knowing it, Clara had just crossed the threshold into a world she knew nothing about, a world where every choice would be amplified, every emotion intensified, and every step unpredictable. The morning of the wedding, Clara woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never imagined that her impulsive decision to marry a stranger would become reality. The small living room where the ceremony would take place was simply decorated, a few white flowers, scented candles, and a makeshift arch under which they would exchange their vows. James was already waiting for her, elegant in his dark suit but not ostentatiously. He had that calm, almost mysterious smile that had captivated Clara from their first meeting. He extended his hand, and she took it without hesitation, feeling a strange security in the gesture. "Ready for adventure?" he whispered, his eyes sparkling. "More than ever," Clara replied, her heart pounding. The ceremony was short but heartfelt. A few close friends had been invited, but most of the attendees were curious passers-by, witnesses to a marriage as improbable as it was unexpected. Clara said her vows with a trembling but convincing voice, promising to face life with courage and openness, without knowing what the future held. After signing the official papers, Clara felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. She was married, legally and permanently, to a man she barely knew. The outside world continued to spin, indifferent to her madness, but for her, everything had just changed. It was only after the ceremony, when they left the parlor, that Clara began to perceive clues about James's true identity. The people around them greeted each other with respect and admiration, some even bowing their heads slightly. Clara frowned. This was not the behavior usually reserved for a mere stranger. "Do you know everyone here?" she asked, intrigued. James smiled mysteriously, as if amused by her ignorance. "Let's just say I have a few contacts. But don't worry. For you, this is just me and you." Clara nodded, still unaware of the magnitude of what she had just done. The day ended with a small reception at a chic downtown cafe. The guests, some obviously influential, offered her polite smiles, while she wondered how she could have, with a single impulsive gesture, found herself in the middle of a world she didn't yet understand. What she didn't know yet was that behind James's charming smile was a billionaire, heir to a colossal empire. And soon, revelations about his wealth and social status would transform this unexpected marriage into something far more complex than a simple whim. But for now, Clara let herself be carried away by the excitement, the thrill, and the unexpected. The wedding, though surprising and unreal, had become the first step toward a future she would never have dared to imagine. The days following the wedding were strangely calm for Clara. She tried to regain some semblance of normalcy, but every moment with James filled her with a mixture of wonder and worry. She expected their life to be simple, but James sometimes acted distant, sometimes mysterious, as if he were hiding a part of himself. It was a sunny afternoon, a few weeks after their marriage, that Clara finally discovered the truth. James took her to a posh part of the city, among skyscrapers and luxury cars. As they entered an imposing building, Clara felt her heart sink. It was a corporate headquarters. "Welcome to my office," James said with a light laugh. Clara's mouth fell open. The corridors were vast, elegantly decorated, and every employee who crossed their path seemed to know him, greeting him with respect and admiration. The glances they exchanged with her betrayed an immediate curiosity. "James, what exactly is this place?" she asked, her voice betraying her astonishment. James stopped in front of a glass office overlooking the entire city and placed his hand on Clara's shoulder. "Clara, I suppose it's time I told you the truth. I'm not just a passerby. I'm the heir to Whitmore Industries. We have investments all over the world, companies in technology, real estate, finance." Clara felt a mixture of shock and confusion. Her legs nearly gave way beneath her. A billionaire, she was married to a billionaire without even knowing it. She looked at James, trying to figure out if this was a joke. "But, why didn't you tell me before the wedding?" she whispered, her voice trembling. James smiled softly, almost guiltily. "I wanted you to love me for who I am, Clara, not for what I have. I wanted this marriage to be sincere, even if it was crazy, impulsive, but sincere." Clara took a deep breath. The revelation of James's fortune changed everything. She felt both intimidated and fascinated. Part of her feared that the people around her would only see her as the wife of a billionaire, but another part was curious to discover this world that had been completely unknown to her. "So, everything I've seen so far, the people, the looks, it's not normal?" she asked, trying to understand the magnitude of the situation. "No," James explained. "People here respect what I do, and, now they respect you too. But don't worry, Clara. You don't have to worry about anything. I want you to be yourself, and for us to discover this world together." Clara felt a mixture of apprehension and excitement. She had just crossed a threshold whose consequences she had no idea would ensue, but one thing was certain, her life had changed forever. This impulsive marriage, this crazy decision made in a moment of pain and anger, had thrust her into a world of opulence, power, and budding love. For the first time in a long time, Clara realized she was no longer a spectator in her life. She was now a main character in a world beyond anything she had imagined. And despite her fears, she felt the adventure was only just beginning. The weeks following the revelation of James's fortune were a whirlwind of emotions for Clara. Every morning she woke in the luxurious suite they shared, and every detail of this new life reminded her of how unlikely her marriage had been. The walls adorned with expensive paintings, the windows overlooking the entire city, and the discreet service that left everything within her reach, all of it fascinated and intimidated her in equal measure. Yet the more time she spent with James, the more one nagging question kept recurring in her mind: does James really love me, or is this all just a game of wealth and power? She tried to smile, to share light moments, but her doubts remained, hidden behind every burst of laughter. One evening, while they were dining in an elegant restaurant overlooking the illuminated river, Clara could not contain her curiosity. "James," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the glow of the streetlights on the water. "I have to ask you an honest question. Did you marry me for me, or because you wanted this adventure?" James looked at her for a long time, his eyes serious but filled with gentleness. "Clara, I'm not going to lie to you. The way you proposed to me, it was crazy. Totally unexpected. But believe me, from that moment on, something inside me changed. I saw you as you are, spontaneous, real, and captivating. I didn't expect to fall in love, but I did. And now, I want our marriage to be sincere, to be you and me, nothing else." Clara felt her heart beat faster, but the uncertainty persisted. Her past experiences had taught her to be wary of love, to doubt the sincerity of others. Was she ready to let herself go, to trust someone she barely knew but who held an entire world in his hands? In the days that followed, Clara faced other inner challenges. She wanted to embrace this new life, but she was afraid of losing her identity. Every gesture from James, every display of affection, seemed both comforting and overwhelming. She wondered if she could ever simply be herself, without being judged by appearances or the expectations of the outside world. Yet, deep inside, a small voice whispered that adventure could be beautiful. That this marriage, however crazy it may be, could become the beginning of a sincere, deep, and passionate story. One evening, as she sat alone by the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the night, Clara made a silent decision: she would let her heart guide her, but never give up on herself. She had to learn to navigate fear and desire, doubt and trust, to discover if this unexpected love could truly become hers. And so Clara began to accept that sometimes impulsive choices, born of pain or despair, could open doors to unsuspected worlds, and perhaps to true love. As the days passed, Clara began to see James in ways she'd never imagined. Behind the imposing image of a billionaire hid a simple, caring, and sometimes vulnerable man. Every moment they spent together revealed facets of his personality that money and power couldn't mask. One Saturday morning, James invited Clara to accompany him to one of his charitable endeavors. There, away from offices and contracts, he showed another side of himself, warm with children, attentive to employees, and genuinely interested in the well-being of others. Clara watched her husband help a young boy repair a small robot at a technology workshop, and felt her heart warm. "You really are amazing," she whispered as they left the workshop. James smiled, a little embarrassed by the compliment. "I'm just doing what I can. But you observe with such curiosity and kindness that it touches me." It was a pivotal moment for Clara. For the first time, she felt that love could be born gently, not on impulse, but through understanding and mutual respect. She found herself laughing with James, sharing memories, and even confiding in him about past hurts. They also spent simple evenings at home, away from the pomp and obligation. Clara cooked for the first time in their large kitchen, and James sat beside her, awkwardly encouraging her. These moments, though small, allowed her to see James as a real man, capable of sincere emotion, and not just as the heir to an empire. For James, it was the same. He had been surprised by Clara's spontaneity and courage. She didn't judge him for his wealth or his responsibilities, and she accepted him as he was, with his strengths and weaknesses. Little by little, trust and complicity developed between them, as if their souls were beginning to align after a long period of discord. Still, Clara remained aware of the challenges ahead. Their world was filled with observers and judgments. She knew that every misstep could be magnified by those who saw this marriage as a curiosity or a threat. Yet, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could navigate this world with a partner by her side, an ally who truly respected and loved her. This phase of discovery was marked by small gestures, simple conversations, and moments of mutual attention. Clara began to feel a security she had never known before, a sweet, comforting certainty that James was not just a husband chosen on a whim, but someone with whom she could truly build a life. And so, between bursts of laughter and confidences, between curiosity and wonder, the first true bonds were woven, transforming an impulsive marriage into a silent promise, that of a love being born, fragile but powerful. As Clara and James began to build a genuine bond, the reality of their unlikely marriage began to hit home. It wasn't long before the curious, sometimes envious, looks of James's loved ones began to sink in. His family, in particular, didn't look kindly on this impulsive union. To them, Clara was just an outsider, a woman who came from nowhere, with no standing in the world of Whitmore Industries. At a formal dinner at James's lavish family residence, Clara immediately sensed the tension. James's parents, elegant and immaculate, regarded her with a polite but penetrating coldness. "So, Clara," said her mother-in-law, a fixed smile on her lips, "we are curious to know how you intend to integrate into our very particular world." Clara felt a shudder of discomfort, but answered with dignity. "I'm here to learn, to support James, and to be myself. I know I didn't grow up in this world, but I'm ready to invest in it." His response was met with a heavy silence, broken only by James's approving murmur. "Clara is sincere. She deserves a chance." But the real test didn't come only from within the family. Some of James's financial rivals, jealous of his position and always on the lookout for the slightest misstep, began to observe Clara. Every gesture, every word, every public appearance was scrutinized. Rumors of an impulsive, foreign, and inexperienced wife began to circulate in certain business circles, and some did not hesitate to question her legitimacy. Clara sometimes felt overwhelmed by the pressure. She doubted her ability to be accepted, and the fear of disappointing James or losing his love haunted her. Yet, every time James held her in his arms or whispered a few reassuring words, she regained courage and determination. "It doesn't matter what other people think," he said one evening as they walked in the park, "what matters is us." These words became her mantra. Clara understood that to protect their happiness, she had to remain strong and true to herself. She began to assert her opinions at family gatherings, demonstrate her worth at charity events, and even take the initiative in some of James's projects. Every success, every genuine smile she received, strengthened her confidence and their bond. Still, the threat remained. The enemies of happiness, whether motivated by envy, power, or prejudice, continued to test Clara. And the more she withstood these challenges, the more she realized that her marriage to James was not just an impulsive one, but a true partnership where courage, loyalty, and love would be put to the test. So, between the critical looks, the whispers and the obstacles, Clara began to understand that the path to happiness was never simple, but that it could be magnificent if she learned to navigate with strength and confidence alongside the man she had chosen, even on a whim. Over time, Clara and James began to feel something deeper than mere curiosity or the excitement of an impulsive marriage. Trials, family challenges, and small shared victories had created a sincere bond between them, built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. One evening, after a long day overseeing charity projects and meeting with business partners, James invited Clara to dinner at an intimate restaurant, away from the hustle and bustle of the city and prying eyes. The setting was discreet, lit by candles, with a view of the shimmering river. "Clara," James whispered, taking her hand, "I know it all started in an unlikely way, but I want you to know one thing: every moment spent with you shows me that I love you for who you are, not for what you represent." Clara felt her heart tighten, a gentle warmth filling her chest. The words she had long dreaded, fearing she would never hear from anyone, finally resonated with absolute sincerity. "James. I love you too," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't think I've ever felt anything so strong and true." They exchanged an emotional look, as if all the barriers they had erected around their hearts had suddenly collapsed. For the first time, Clara realized that love could be born from an impulse, but transform into something lasting, deep, and pure. The following days were marked by this newfound harmony. They shared simple, sincere moments, walks at sunset, confidences by the fire, spontaneous laughter that seemed to remove the pressures of the outside world. Clara realized that James was truly listening to her, that he took her opinions, her desires, and her dreams into account. One afternoon, while they were organizing an event for a foundation dedicated to supporting young entrepreneurs, James watched Clara speak with the young participants, encouraging them with patience and enthusiasm. He felt a deep respect and growing admiration for her. "You know, Clara," he said softly, "you're incredible. Every day I discover something new about you, something that makes me proud to be your husband." Clara smiled, touched. She understood that true love wasn't just about grand declarations or spectacular gestures, but about consistency, attention to detail, and mutual support. She also realized that, despite James's wealth and status, what really mattered was the sincere, reciprocal human connection they shared. This realization changed the dynamics of their marriage. What had begun as an impulsive marriage, born of pain and spontaneity, slowly transformed into a true love story. Clara finally felt safe, loved, and respected, and James discovered that a spontaneous and sincere heart could be the greatest treasure of all. And so, between challenges overcome and moments of complicity, Clara and James built the foundations of a true love, solid and ready to face all the storms to come. Everything seemed to be going perfectly for Clara and James. Their love had solidified, their bond grew stronger every day, and they were beginning to be seen as a respected and inspiring couple. But as is often the case in stories where love is born in turmoil, a major challenge was brewing, ready to test their trust and their bond. One morning, Clara received a call from her press office. Photos of her and James, taken at a private event, had just been leaked. The rumors in the press and on social media were immediate and cruel. Some claimed that Clara was only interested in money, that their marriage was nothing more than an opportunistic arrangement. The comments were virulent, and even those close to James seemed doubtful, unsure of the sincerity of their union. Clara felt her heart clench. The doubts she had once known resurfaced, more powerful than ever. She tried not to show her panic in front of James, but inside, it was chaos. James, meanwhile, felt the tension rising. His business and reputation were under attack, but he was more concerned about Clara than the rumors. He found her in their apartment, her hands shaking, her gaze lost. "Clara," he murmured, gently taking her in his arms. "It's okay. We'll face this together. I know who you are, and I know that you truly love me. Nothing and no one can change that." These words, though comforting, were not enough to dispel the storm. Clara knew she had to act to prove her loyalty and sincerity, not only to James, but to herself. She decided to face the situation with courage. She agreed to give interviews, to speak openly about her marriage and her love for James. She was not intimidated by the innuendos and demonstrated through her actions and words that she was a devoted and genuine wife. At the same time, James confronted his financial rivals, clarifying that the attacks were unfounded and that their relationship was not a tool of manipulation or power. Together, they demonstrated an unwavering unity, defying criticism and prejudice. After several weeks of trial, the storm subsided. The rumors gradually died down, and those who had doubted Clara began to recognize her sincerity and strength of character. This ordeal, although painful, had an unexpected effect. It brought Clara and James closer together than ever before. They had overcome a major crisis together, and the trust that bound them was strengthened. Clara then understood a fundamental truth: true love is not measured only in moments of happiness and lightness, but above all in the ability to withstand storms, to remain united in the face of challenges and to believe in the sincerity of the other, even when the whole world seems to conspire against them. And so, at the end of this ordeal, their bond became indestructible, ready to face the next chapters of their lives with courage, love, and complicity. As the months passed, Clara and James began to fully enjoy their life together. The initial tensions, doubts, and trials were behind them. Each obstacle overcome had strengthened their bond, and the impulsive marriage that had initially seemed like madness turned out to be the most beautiful choice. Clara had found her place in James's world, but without ever giving up who she was. She pursued her personal projects, got involved in charitable initiatives, and brought her vision, spontaneity, and sensitivity to every action she took. Her sincerity and determination had won over not only James, but also his family and colleagues, who now saw her as a full partner. James, for his part, had come to appreciate Clara's depth and strength. He discovered that true love lay not in wealth or status, but in respect, complicity, and the ability to support one another. Every look, every gesture, every smile he exchanged with Clara reinforced his certainty that their union extended far beyond appearances and the circumstances that had brought it into being. One evening, as they were walking in a garden lit by hanging lanterns, James took Clara's hand and looked straight into her eyes. "Clara, I think this marriage, which began with a burst of madness, has become the most beautiful adventure of my life. Thank you for believing in us." Clara felt a deep warmth fill her heart. She smiled, her eyes shining, and replied, "Thank you, James, for showing me that love can be born even in the most unexpected moments and that it can grow into something true and solid." At that moment, there was no room for doubt or fear. Their relationship was now cemented by experience, trust, and genuine love. They understood that what had begun as an impulsive marriage had become a true soul-to-soul affair, a union capable of withstanding any storm. And as the gentle breeze caressed their faces and the stars twinkled above them, Clara and James realized they had found much more than love. They had found a partnership, a bond, and a shared life rich in emotion, respect, and happiness. Their unlikely adventure, born of impulse and chance, had taken root in sincerity and heart, transforming a simple madness into an unforgettable love story. Clara now knew that sometimes the craziest decisions could lead to the most beautiful destinies. And so, hand in hand, they moved forward into the future, ready to write the next chapters of their lives together, with confidence, passion and serenity.